Yes, I do. And I'll connect them. Okay, so this one's just kind of a very lighthearted one. I originally did this one for Nicola Canton's Turbo Boost, and it has evolved a little bit. But I think that we can all, again, with the organization thing, keep in mind different ways that we can kind of keep our studios clean and tidy because we have a business, right? And that's something we want to welcome, a space we want to welcome people into. Here's the handout. This is actually not a handout. This is actually a web page on my site that I have put together. I'm going to pop that in the chat too if you want it directly from your computer, or you can scan the QR code and get it from your device. Hopefully that's working for everybody. I'll leave it there for just a second to give you a chance. All right, so I feel like either most of us are probably in two camps. Either you're the person on the left and living in a state of disorganization for several reasons. You could feel like you're disorganized because either one, it just doesn't come naturally to you. Two, you're too busy to worry about it, or it just kind of feels futile because it's going to all get out of control anyway. Or three, you would like to be more organized, but it just feels like things are so out of control that you're just not even sure where to start. If you're the person on the right, you might feel like you're on top of things when it comes to organization. Maybe you just can't stand having things around you disorganized and every element has to be in place. Now, my guess is most of us are somewhere in the middle. Me, I'm probably middle far right. Although if you know me at all, you probably assume I am far right. But, you know, even I don't have things perfectly organized all the time and I'm not totally neat. I mean, gotta live life, right? So you may be wondering how this is pertinent to us as teachers. And as I said a minute ago, we are creating an environment in a space for our students and our families. There is a quote that one of my studio moms put, I don't even know where she gave it to me, if it was maybe a year-end evaluation or what it was, but she said to me, I love coming here. If only I could make my life as orderly and structured as you run your lessons. You know exactly what you're doing when. It's like boom, boom, boom. It always smells good in here and it's always neat and clean. And that's the part that I want to highlight because I felt like that just spoke words for someone to actually point out that they like being in that space. To me, it's just like taking things to the next level in your studio. Yes, we can be good teachers, but it's what's that little element, that little like cherry on top of being in a space that makes them feel good. In the session, we're going to look at how we can implement a simple, consistent, and sustainable tidying routine in our studios, specifically through 5 different time points. Small little checklists and very incremental, but minimal time commitments. So as we go through each one of these, the time commitment is going to get a little bit bigger, but it's incremental, little by little. Now, tidying our spaces isn't something that we should tackle just once at the end of the school term. I think there's 5 different times. We've got the end of the lesson, the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of the season, and the end of the year. The first point in time is the simplest and perhaps the one that you might wonder, like, why do you need to make a point about that? But I think maybe it's a time that you may not consider having an impact, and that is tidying at the end of every lesson. And this isn't really even a time commitment. I'm talking taking 15 seconds that you may have between students to do a tiny reset. You can even do this while you're giving salutations to your student. So as you chit chat, throw away trash that's accumulated, like, you know, post-it page markers or page tabs. Resituate all your pens. You might have them sprawled out everywhere. Highlighters and stickers. Just put everything back in its designated place and put away any books that maybe you pulled out a couple books for a student to choose from. Just throw those back in the file drawer. Maybe it's resituating the benches from group classes. Just done. You don't even have to do it, you know, like I said, you can do it while you're talking to the student. It's very quick, very easy. The second time in point to be thinking about tidying your studios is at the end of every single day. All you really need for this is 5 to 15 minutes max. The days of teaching are long enough. We don't need to spend 30 minutes tidying our studios every single day. Now, this is going to look a lot different for each of us, but here are a few things that I do on my daily checklist. Again, a lot of the things that I do at the end of the lesson, so we're kind of rolling into each area. I put away all my materials, any manipulatives and games that I've had out, Push in benches, close your piano lid maybe, wrap up headphones if you have group classes with multiple keyboards. Do a quick scan of all your assignments. Like if you use an online lesson tool, I like to just go back really quickly, make sure everybody's assignments are in order, make sure there's nothing I missed, and then do a final look over of my emails to make sure there's nothing urgent that needs replied to. The third point in time is the end of the week. So this again should include all those daily tasks that you do every day, plus maybe a few more that you don't want to get out of hand. Make it a goal that this takes no more than 15 minutes on Fridays or Saturdays, 15 to 30 minutes, and that you've actually set aside time in your schedule to do this. So maybe you have to ensure that your last student leaves by 4:30 on Friday so you have time to wrap up the week, do your weekly shutdown routine, and be out of your studio by 5 o'clock. So here are some of the things that I do in my end of week routine. One, I consider my Monday students. I like to kind of think about, is there anything I need to prepare ahead of time or think about or order? Sort through email and get it to a manageable state. And this is the point I think I mentioned in the last session where I do email every day, but there are certain things like newsletters and articles that I don't spend time reading in my normal daily email processing, and I save that for the end of the week. Do a quick clean out of your photos. Again, just quickly go into your pictures, see if you have any duplicates, any pictures that you want to sort students into folders, like we talked about the albums if you use Google Photos. Maybe even jump into your downloads folder. And if you've downloaded stuff, I know we're very guilty of downloading into a downloads folder and then not placing it into an actual folder itself. So just go into your downloads and make sure that there's nothing that you've accidentally saved and not moved into a proper folder. You might consider doing a complete closeout of your computer, shutting it down, charging your mouse, maybe cleaning the computer screen. I like to do financial record keeping at the end of every week, sorting receipts, maybe paying bills. This is one of those things that you could do once a month or quarterly, the financial part. But honestly, over the years, I have found it is so much easier for me, at least, doing it once a week. It feels like such a smaller time commitment than trying to do it once a month or once a quarter. Now, one thing I would recommend you do, you see the little, finger reminder here on the slide. Set a reminder on your calendar, or maybe actually create an actual event on your calendar that just says, it pops up every week, studio reset, weekly tidy reset. Because sometimes it's easy for these little checklists, like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. And you have good intentions, but then you don't really end up doing it every week. Oh, I'm too busy. I got to be here or whatever. So put it into your calendar, schedule it, have a pop-up, have it all written down so that you know exactly what you want to do each week. The fourth important time to consider is the end of your studio's calendar year. So I'm saying it's the end of the season, but I'm thinking actually more of your studio year. So if you had to divide up your lessons into segments, and actually I shouldn't say year, I mean more of like seasons, right? So like maybe you have festival season and then you move into recital season and then you have the summer months. What does that look like for you? So for me, I think about my studio in terms of summer, June and July. The fall term is like August, September, October. Then we have fall break. And then I have Christmas music season, October, November, December, festival prep, January, February, March, spring recital, March, April, May. So this is a great time every few months to reset and do some bigger projects, especially in December, things like doing a cleanup, because I just hate coming back in January and having my studio have like Christmas music still stacked up. It just feels awful. So here's a checklist for you for the end of your seasons. Do some student planning, order repertoire, get a stash of books. Like if you have a lot of books that you use regularly, I can't think of the word I want to say, stock up, stock up on books. Get rid of piles that you have, wrap up projects. Maybe you have a new worksheet that you were designing for students and you never quite finished it. Refill prize box items. Tackle larger projects like researching new music, designing new curriculum maps, setting any online tools up. It's a great time to do, like if you maybe are starting to use CoinHop, or if you're starting to use an assignment app or learning to use something like Microsoft OneNote. Take some time to sit down and learn how to use those things. And then, as I mentioned before, if you prefer to do this quarterly, you would want to do your financial work, receipt management, and so forth. All right. As I mentioned before, put it actually on your calendar. And as Michael Hyatt, I followed him a lot in the past. He says, what gets scheduled gets done. So call it seasonal studio cleanup. All right. So you've got your end of week, you've got your end of season. Our last and final period to consider is now the entire year, right? So the end of the school year. For me, that's the end of May. Some of you, it might be the beginning of June. And it just feels so good to me to have that distinct end. It's just like a letdown, a reset. Once a year is generally good for these kinds of things that you need to do. I sometimes do this at the beginning of the school year. So sometimes I will do these end of term tasks like in early August before I go back to lessons. And sometimes I'll do it at the end of the school year before we start summer lessons. It just kind of depends on what life is bringing. So in this point, we're talking deep inventory, cleaning, and reorganizing. I usually have a week between breaks or a week between summer and school year that's good to do this. As far as time allows, you definitely want to set aside a good chunk of time, right? Because you want to feel like I actually have the breath. I actually have the time to do what I want to get done. Honestly, I've been known to spend entire days doing this. So let's talk something specific. There are 3 big areas I mentally work through at the end of each year. Think, rearrange, reorganize, and rethink. I've been lucky to have a large rooms for my studio, so I am often rearranging and putting like my keyboards in different places or my desk in a different place. Now, you might have a small studio space, but you might be surprised at how you could reconfigure it. Just think about things like, how do you interact with your students? Like, have you ever tried teaching from the other side of the piano? Do you want your desk or your workspace to be close to the piano, or do you want it to have its own separate space? Like, could you maybe move that desk or the filing cabinet so it's easier to access your student materials? Would maybe having a little work table set up be good to create some workspace? So rearrange, try something different. 2, reorganize. If you've ever seen the Netflix show called Home Edit, they use these different categories of edit, categorize, contain, and maintain. There we go. Edit, categorize, contain, and maintain. So categorize. So think about, so editing is like going through and like looking at all your games and going, gosh, I've got like 50 games here and I never use this one, this one, this one, this one. Okay, I'm going to get rid of them. I just don't use them. It's just too much information, right? More than we actually need. So edit stuff out, get rid of things you don't use anymore. Then categorize. So put your games together and determine, is this for technique? Is it maybe a technique tool or toy? Is it flashcards? Is it games? Is it just extra office supplies? So categorize things into different areas. Contain is, don't just have a drawer in your desk that has all of your office supplies in it thrown everywhere. Can you put it in little containers and keep things that they're separated out? Rubber bands, paper clips, game markers. I use different containers for different types of game markers, things like that. And then maintain it. Try to keep consistency. So rearrange, reorganize things, and then rethink what's working, what's not. Maybe rethink, how am I giving assignments? Is that working for me still? Is my billing working? Maybe your billing is really time consuming and you need to make a change. Maybe you need to spend some time investing in learning how to use social media for your studio or improving your studio communication. So these are all big items that we don't have time to do during the year. But yes, we don't want to let years and years pass us by without reconsidering some of these things. Okay, so as we wrap up, let's revisit those 5 times. You want to tidy your studio at the end of every lesson, really quickly, the end of every day, just about 5 to 15 minutes, the end of every week, maybe 30 minutes at the most, the end of the season, so about quarterly, maybe 30 minutes to an hour there, and then the once a year do the big picture stuff. So whether that's the end of a term or the school year. And William Wordsworth says to begin, just begin. Start tidying and cleaning. And again, I have a podcast episode for that as well, of course. I think I have some from last May that were called The Great Purge, and we talk about purging like magazines and professional, magazines and some of your college notebooks and purging your games and all kinds of different things like that. So once again, here's my contact information if you would like to connect with me online. And if you guys have any questions, shoot, I don't see much in the chat, which is fine. This is a little bit simpler than our digital management strategies session.
Amy, you mentioned podcasts a few times. Do we get those from your website?
Yeah, okay. If you go to pianopantry.com/podcast, I'll put that in the chat. .com/podcast. All of the podcasts are listed on that main page, and you can click into any of them and listen directly there. Or I have full transcripts of most of the episodes. You can read the transcripts and links and everything. So yeah, all of the podcasts that I mentioned today, you'll be able to find on that page directly. Any other questions? I think we're pretty close to our time. Yeah, we good?
Do you have a suggestion? I'm trying to reorganize some of my music books. Sometimes I have, say, repertoire anthologies that I might use with this level of my young person's method, this level with my later beginners, and this level with my adult. I might use them with all of them. What do you do with those things? I mean, I don't want to buy 3 separate copies of them, put them in 3 places, but I do like to organize my materials by level. It just makes it easier to pull things for lessons. So what do you do with things that are used in more than one place?
That's a good question. It depends on, are you wanting to like have like studio copies for yourself, you mean?
Yeah, the stuff that I have, yeah.
So, and you're talking about like anthologies that have like multiple levels in them,
For example,
basically?
I might have a repertoire anthology that I use with this level for my young people, this level for my older beginners, and I might also use it with my adults. And they each have different method books. So I have, and I want to organize things by level.
And you want to organize it by level. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I tend to do like all my anthologies not by level, but just by like anthology, so that, and then I would maybe I would label the book itself with the different levels. Yeah, that's tricky. I'm gonna pop up.
Maybe just by series is easier.
Yeah, so I tend to do some things I do like when I organize hard copy books, like I'll do some things by level. Some things I do by composer. Some things I do by anthology. It kind of depends on how I think about some of those particular books and materials. One thing I do is I like to sometimes take photocopies of my contents of the books. So like you might have one copy of like Celebration Series, Prep B or something. And if you want to do it by levels, I would take a photocopy of the contents and then put the contents page in the other levels so that you know that you have the book, but then you know that the book is in another level. Like maybe you keep all of your stuff in your beginner level stuff. And then if you also have if you use it for like adult students or higher level students, you would just put the contents page there so that you know that you own the book.
That's an idea.
Does that make sense, kind of?
Yep.
That would be the easiest solution I would think of, is you want to be able to have multiple copies, but at least you would be able to have reference in each of those areas.
Thank you. That's very
And
good.
tagging, yeah, tagging would be like digital tagging, if you had, well, you're talking more hard copy books though, right?
Yeah, I am. I'm talking about hard copy, but Deborah, what do you mean by tagging? Do you mean tagging in an index, like with keywords, or do you mean physical?
Well, I don't know. I think maybe I misunderstood. I thought you were doing everything digitally, and this was all
Oh,
digitally.
this is actually my bookshelves, my actual bookshelves,
I see.
but that is, yeah,
What
I
if,
could
but what
understand
if
that.
you did have a digital record of it too, and then you could just do it by tagging it and like,
Yeah, that would make sense. I got it. That
Yeah.
would make sense. Okay.
Yeah, and everyone, Amy put in the chat a link to her page about organizing the hard copy music books.
I do think if you were to do the table of contents idea, just so that you know that it's there, I would use the thick paper, what's it called? Cardstock. So cardstock would be thicker to print it on that, and it would stand more upright than just having like a sheet of paper there. You could also, if it's a thicker anthologies, you could even put labels on the spine, you know, the different levels on the spine of it, if you could see it that way.
I see. Excellent. Okay. So much great information. Does anyone else have anything they want to ask? Well, again, we're particularly glad that Amy came back again, gave an encore performance for us. Again, this was a new thing. We wanted to try to invite people from around the state, and I'm so thrilled that a couple people have come, in addition to those from the main line and a few that are outside. So, you know, we'll do this again. I do want to say our state president is here, Wendy. So if after we leave, if anyone wants to ask any questions, maybe if you wanted to stay on for 5 minutes, Wendy.
yeah, I'd love to.
You know, the state organization is a great thing. I would encourage everybody to go to the conference in June. It's just a great way to meet people and hear great presentations, just like we just heard, and learn and recharge and refresh. But Amy, you've given us so much to digest. Um, what we will do is we will post your handouts, if it's okay, Amy, in a special section that's for our members only that they can access by password.
Yep.
I also will pass along the recording of the sections for you so that you can have them for your purposes. And I will post a link for people who weren't able to attend, who can enter a password and watch this, or those who did see it who want to watch it again. It'll be accessible to them. But thank you so much to Amy for just really a great session. Thank you for Miriam for also a great session and for just organizing everything. And next month, we hope to see you all at the church or online for a presentation with Bonnie Keller. So we'll sign off for now.
Thank you
And
so much.
thank you all for joining.
Much
And
appreciated.
have a great month.
Thank you.
Take
Fantastic.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.